So today's interview is to follow up on my blues interviews, and today I have with me Larry Taylor and Bonnie McKeown, or also known as Bonnie Barrelhouse McKeown, and I think we'll discuss that in a little bit. Bonnie, can you say hi to all our radio listeners, Larry and Bonnie?
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Okay, so they're in Chicago and I'm in Indianapolis. And I'd like to start off by, first of all, talking with you, Larry. You're the son of quite a famous musician, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
So tell me a little bit about your dad. I'd like to know how he got the title Eddie the Playboy Taylor. How did that happen?
Well, back in the day, he was pretty familiar with the ladies, and that's how he got that name,
Yeah, well, that's pretty good. And he played with some pretty interesting musicians. Did you ever sit in or listen to them? Who did he play with for our listeners?
Well, he practically played with practically everybody in the blues business, and even dating back to Booker White and Robert Johnson and all them.
Wow, that's going back. So when did you start in the blues business, Larry?
I started in the blues business in the 70s.
Was that in Chicago?
That was here in Chicago, yeah.
Okay, what did you do then? Were you playing in small clubs and bars?
Yeah.
And how old were you then, Larry?
I was like 21 years old, so, I did a lot of playing with my dad and stuff, like 13 years or something like that.
Wow, that must have been very cool to be able to learn the guitar, learn the blues, and actually sit in with someone pretty famous and bands that really knew what they were doing. That must have been a very cool experience for you.
Yeah, it's a cool experience, and I got a chance to play with a lot of some of the great blues masters, so that was a good thing for me,
And it kind of lifts you up, doesn't it? And that you play your best when you're with people who can also play pretty good.
I mean, when you with those guys, you had to play your best. They weren't going to accept nothing else but the best.
Yeah. And your current band, Larry, is Chicago's Blues Generation?
It was given the new generation of blues after we toured, and we went to Europe. We went to Europe in '77. That's how that came about. Jazz promoter, guy named George Strunk connected to Jim O'Neill, Annie O'Neill, and Willie Dixon.
Yeah, well, in my last interview that we did just a few days ago, Willie Dixon's granddaughter, Tamika, was... yeah, I know. You're both from the Chicago area, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
And now let's go over to you, Bonnie. What is this nickname that you got, Bonnie the Barrelhouse? Tell me about that.
Okay, just to name the style of piano that I play, it's the old-fashioned, basically pre-World War II piano where you play the whole piano and a lot of, boogie lines on the bass. And
oh, yes.
The great piano players, like Big Nature, Merriweather, Big Moose Walker, who actually Larry played with, Otis Spann, and your Buddy Waters band. All these people have this great piano style because Pine Top Perkins was the latest famous piano player who just passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
And we both played at the same show as Pine Top. So anyway, the Barrelhouse name is just basically the style of piano that I play.
Okay.
And I learned the style because I grew up in West Virginia, and on the East Coast we do a lot of acoustic music, both in country and bluegrass and that kind of thing. So I learned the acoustic style of blues.
So how long have you two played together in the band that you've got now?
Well, the band we have now is the SB Healers, which stands for the Soul Blues Healers, because we think that this is a healing form of music and it brings people together no matter what their background, their age, their race, religion. It brings people together all over the world. So it's Soul Blues Healers.
Yes, it does.
We just played together off and on since 2004.
Okay, that's a lot of gigs, a lot of playing. And tell me about the lineup of your band.
Well, basically the lineup of the band is basically good guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, saxophones, and horns, maybe.
Okay, so that's a pretty full sound. I think as soon as you add sax or a horn section, it thickens up the whole sound, doesn't it, Larry? And it really, you do some lovely fill-ins.
Yeah, it does.
When I was living in London, the English music scene was, 3 guitars, drum, and maybe the occasional keyboard, 2-part harmonies, possibly 3-part harmonies. And the music that was coming out of Chicago and Detroit, mainly Detroit, they had choral backing, string sections, horn sections with beautiful fill-ins, and I thought to myself, this is real music. This is orchestral stuff, and here we are listening to, you know, three guys singing with a bass player and a drummer, and it was just such a different style. And you grew up with all that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
That's pretty cool. Now, one of the things we talked about on the phone, Bonnie and I, was about really trying to keep the blues alive. Tell me a little bit about your views of that, living in West Chicago.
Well, here it's very competitive, and you know, well, a lot of people don't know blues is very popular from the west side and the south side. Very, very popular. And back then, like in the 70s and the 80s, we had a lot of blues venues and stuff. We don't have a lot of venues now. But the few places that are still around on the west, you know, they still try to promote and still try to keep the blues alive, in spite of all of them.
Yeah, now, name me a couple of the venues, the places in Chicago, West Chicago and South Chicago, that you're able to play at.
Well, the Good Time Lounge is one. That's on the south side. Then they got Linda's on the south side. They got, one was called Dr. J's and the other one was Rick's.
Right, Waterhole's where we've been.
Waterhole, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really only a few places. Now, what about the rest of Chicago? Do they have a blues following? I'm thinking of the famous House of Blues in Chicago.
Those clubs, those are mostly two-attraction clubs, like the House of Blues, Chasing Nines. Those are two-attraction clubs. But most of the time when people come here, they like to try to come to the west side or the south side because they say that's where the real blues, the real music is at.
Bonnie, tell me, why do you see the blues as really struggling to be a mainstream form of music? Why do you think it's struggling?
I think it's struggling because there's no group of promoters that are committed to promoting the genre as a whole. And the second generation after Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, who learned from these masters, but somehow the critics have downplayed the entire second generation, both male and female, singers and musicians, and they're not respected. All it would take, we had a nonprofit venue, and then we had the clubs on top of that. So there's the clubs, and we know that it's a hard business to be in a club because you don't know how many people are going to walk in the door on any given night. And it's not just the artist that affects it, it's the weather, it's maybe there's a ball game, maybe who knows what it is.
Yeah.
And they feel like they can't pay what we need to be paid. That's basically what it is. So what you've got to do is you've got to have a nonprofit sector step in and say, we're going to have a concert at the same time we're doing also the commercial versions, the club versions of the blues. We've got to have educational programs to pay these musicians to go to teach the kids. And I have a program. It's not a nonprofit organization, but I have a fiscal sponsor, and it's called the Chicago School Blues.
Hang on, say that again. Chicago School Blues?
Chicago School of Blues.
What is that?
It's just a traveling workshop. We make our program adapted to whatever the school, or a lot of times who really wants us is the after-school programs, because we have such a problem with youth violence in the city, and after-school programs are a great thing because that's the time when kids tend to get into trouble after school, maybe before their parents come home from work, or just because they hang out with their buddies. These programs would love to have us. I'm in touch with several of them on the west side, and the problem is money. If we had a fund for this, and we could use it to go to the schools, I take one musician with me for the lesson. A lot of these kids have never even had music. They've never really been exposed to instruments except if they're in church, maybe, because music is dying out as an art form in this country. It's horrible.
Well, I think a lot of that is to do with school funding and curriculums.
But you know what? It's also important to learn how to get along with other people.
Yeah.
And music is one of the best ways to teach that. And so what we do is we just teach the kids to make up their own blues tune.
Yeah.
Start from there, and then we introduce the history of the blues and how it came from a very poor, deprived background, and they made something beautiful out of it. And it's one of the greatest contributions that African Americans have made to the world.
This was part one of my interview with Larry Taylor and Bonnie McKeown. Part two coming right up. This was part one of my interview with Larry Taylor and Bonnie McKeown. Part two coming right up.